What's good? It's Woog. You know, before Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford was made, I had said that Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia was probably the biggest fight of the year. And then I said that Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko on paper might be the best fight of the year, quality-wise. Well, this fight right here, I like just as much as both of those fights. We have Josh Taylor, 19 wins and 0 losses, defending his WBO light welterweight title against Teofimo Lopez, 18 wins and 1 loss. Josh Taylor is obviously the former undisputed 140-pound champion. He had won the World Boxing Super Series, beating the likes of Ryan Martin, Ivan Baranchyk, and then in the finals, a majority decision win. Very good fight against Regis Prograis. That remains Regis Prograis' only defeat. And then months later, COVID hit, and then Josh Taylor returned to the ring in September of 2020 against Kong Song, stopping him in the first round. And then in the following May of 2021, the battle for undisputed took place between Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor. Another excellent fight, which Josh Taylor won via unanimous decision in a fight that featured 2 knockdowns, and one of those knockdowns was pretty controversial. And then Josh Taylor was out of the ring for some time, returned to the ring in his hometown of Scotland, and that's where he faced Jack Catterall. And then Josh Taylor won that via very controversial split decision, which featured a knockdown of Josh Taylor at the hands of Jack Catterall in the 8th round. Very close fight. Watching it, I thought that Jack Catterall probably pulled off like a 1-round decision win. Well, that fight was like 16 months ago now, so Josh Taylor has been out of the ring since. And in trying to schedule a rematch against Jack Catterall in a fight, again, that Josh Taylor technically won, he was determined to make this rematch so much that he dropped 3 of the 4 titles one by one by, instead of fighting his mandatories, electing to set up this fight with Jack Catterall, which was basically postponed twice, once due to injury, which we'll get back to. But in sum, Josh Taylor later pivots, and instead of fighting the Jack Catterall fight, instead elects to fight Teofimo Lopez. And there is so much to discuss when looking at this matchup, so many wild cards. So why don't we start and actually consider some of these? Like Josh Taylor, if you look at what I consider to be his, we'll say physical prime, let's say mid to late 20s, when he was beating the likes of Victor Postal in a pretty close fight, by the way, and beating Miguel Vasquez, Ivan Baranchyk. You look at his legs and his footwork when he's in the ring, his ability to get in and out seemed to be a lot sharper. Whereas when you watch him against Jack Catterall, and there could have been a multitude of reasons why he was so sluggish legs-wise against Jack Catterall, but he goes front foot heavy. He's a very aggressive southpaw. But I just feel like in these early 30s, he doesn't seem to have the same ability, at least if you're judging by the Jack Catterall fight, to dart in and out. Like, watch him against Regis Prograis. Look at how he moves around the ring. Not so much in a lateral and moving around the perimeter ring type of way, but just in the activity of his legs as he's coming in for the attack and then exiting. So I do have questions on Josh Taylor's legs at 32 years old with this recent inactivity, plus with multiple injuries. Don't forget, it wasn't only this foot injury that postponed this latest rematch attempt versus Jack Catterall that Josh Taylor sustained. It was also a knee injury in 2021 that postponed their first matchup. So we're talking multiple injuries when it comes to Josh Taylor. So I wonder how much those injuries are playing into these, we could say, less than ideal or less than spectacular performances for Josh Taylor. Also, he has now switched trainers twice in the past 3 years. Remember, he started off with Shane McGuigan through most of his career, and then he goes with Ben Davison from 2020 on. So we're talking 3 fights: the Kong Song fight, the Jose Ramirez fight, and then the Jack Catterall fight. And then he parts ways with Ben Davison, and now he's with Joe McNally, who also trains Liam Smith. So this is, again, Josh Taylor's 3rd trainer in the past 3 to 4 years, and one wonders why. What's going on? I mean, I did think that his jab was improving under the tutelage of Ben Davison, at least for the first 2 of those 3 fights, his jab wasn't as good against Jack Catterall. It's almost like I feel like he fought that fight as dumbly as Teofimo Lopez fought the George Kambosos fight, where you kind of get the impression that the fighter just entered the ring with knockout on their mind, and they kind of abandoned any reasonable or rational game plan. It just didn't seem like the same Josh Taylor in there against Jack Catterall. So I wonder what happened with Josh Taylor and Ben Davison. Furthermore, I mean, they were talking about Josh Taylor moving up to 147 like 3-4 years ago, where I'm talking pre-COVID. So he's coming back to 140 yet again, this time against a counterpuncher who can dearly make you pay, at least at 135. Yet to be determined how dangerous Teofimo Lopez is at 140. He does have a knockout over Pedro Campa, who we saw give Brandon Lee recently all he could handle. Pedro Campa is one of those tough outs, you know what I mean? But Teofimo Lopez did get the stoppage there. So yeah, I'm wondering about Josh Taylor's legs. I'm wondering about the weight. I'm wondering about the inactivity. I'm wondering about, 32 years of age. And even if you look at how he acts and conducts himself, he acts like an older guy than even his fight against Jose Ramirez. I don't know if there was a switch that was flipped or turned off in terms of his intensity, in terms of his love for the sport, his preparation. I don't know, but something doesn't seem either as youthful, as exuberant, nor as fleet of foot in Josh Taylor in, again, the last year or two. So in considering, for instance, the legs, again, when you have an opponent like Teofimo Lopez, former, it was arguably undisputed at the time that he beat Vasily Lomachenko. Some did consider him undisputed. Some consider him to have held 3 of the 4 belts, with Devin Haney holding the real WBC belt. But there was a lot of dispute there. But Teofimo Lopez, he was, at one point the man at 135 when he basically defied the odds, took a huge gamble, a huge risk, and fought Vasily Lomachenko when Teofimo Lopez, was still like 22, 23 years old, won the fight via close unanimous decision, and then lost against George Kambosos via split decision in the fight where Teofimo Lopez got dropped in the first round. And, people forget, but Teofimo Lopez really battled back and made that a super competitive fight. Again, I thought that he abandoned the game plan, and a lot of people might have also forgotten how many times that fight was postponed, just time and time and time again. But if you, as Josh Taylor, are showing degradation in the youthfulness in your legs, if your legs are heavier and you're a little bit more plodding than you were in the past, Teofimo Lopez is the type of opponent who could expose you, again, with his punching power, with his hand speed. He can knock you out. And I do think that Teofimo Lopez, even at 140, has the power, if he catches Josh Taylor right, to drop him and perhaps stop him. Again, we saw Josh Taylor just get dropped against Jack Catterall in their 8th round. But as many questions as I have on the Josh Taylor side, I have just as many concerns on the Teofimo Lopez side. The personal life versus professional life. We already know, and he's been very forthcoming. He's going through a divorce. He's, saying that his, now ex-wife or soon to be ex-wife is about to take half of everything. Teofimo Lopez, in many instances, hasn't seen his son for long periods of time. In fact, after his most recent fight against Sandor Martin, like, he was calling for his son, for his, ex-wife to pass him his son as he was celebrating his very disputed victory, and he wasn't past his son, and he really felt some type of way about it. So there were personal issues going into his fight against George Kambosos. There were personal issues going into his fight with Sandor Martin. How do we know how removed Teofimo Lopez is from these personal issues to where he could really just hone in and focus on this Josh Taylor fight? I mean, we know that there is every reason to be motivated for this one. I mean, think about how much of a hit Teofimo Lopez's reputation has taken after the George Kambosos loss, and then his 2 fights after that, especially after this latest Sandor Martin fight where Lopez got dropped. Sandor Martin, who, does appear at this stage to, in my opinion, be more fleet of foot than Josh Taylor. Totally different style too. I mean, they're both southpaws, but Sandor Martin is somebody who is kind of moving around the ring more and waiting for his opportunities to counterpunch, whereas Josh Taylor is on his front foot, kind of hunting you down and looking to ignite exchange changes, but think about how much Teofimo Lopez's reputation has taken a hit over the past 2 or so years, year and a half. If Teofimo Lopez beats Josh Taylor, he gets so much of that reputation back. Like, he could kind of right all of those wrongs with a win here. This would be probably, I mean, the second biggest win of his career, right? It's hard to outdo that win against Lomachenko, but this would be huge if he could beat Josh Taylor, who at least technically is still undefeated, a former undisputed champion, and as it stands, Teofimo Lopez is a betting underdog against Josh Taylor. I saw Josh Taylor at a -160, Teofimo Lopez at a +148. So the motivation has got to be there. Teofimo Lopez, you know, the takeover, loves to shock the world, so to speak. So this is his next opportunity to do that. No, he's not as big an underdog as he was against Vasily Lomachenko, but a lot of people think that Josh Taylor has the goods to beat Teofimo Lopez, especially as questionable as Teofimo Lopez has looked as of late. And it's kind of interesting because you look at Teofimo Lopez's style in his recent fights, he appears to almost be showing degradation in his well-roundedness of a boxer. Like, you look at the way that he was jabbing Vasily Lomachenko to the body in the first like 3 or 4 rounds, as he was kind of controlling the pace and dictating the terms of the exchange of that fight, or how he kind of patiently, we'll say, he set traps against Richard Commey and looked for the right opportunities to throw that laser of a right hand, probably his most dangerous punch, stopping Richard Commey in the 2nd round. You look at that Teofimo Lopez, and then you compare it to the Teofimo Lopez that fought Kambosos, Campa, and Sandor Martin. Is it me, or is Teofimo Lopez looking a little bit more basic and less sophisticated as a sweet scientist compared to what he was just a couple of years ago? I almost feel like he's showing degradation in his all-around game. So, I mean, is he going to be able to kind of be a 140-pound version of the same Teofimo Lopez we saw at 135 against Richard Commey and against Vasily Lomachenko? Or are we dealing with a different Teofimo Lopez altogether? So in really assessing Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez, this has been a very tough one to call because of these X factors, because I don't know if we're dealing with the same prime level Josh Taylor. I don't know if we're dealing with the same prime level Teofimo Lopez, and there's so much to gain for each of these fighters if they were to pull off the win here. But style-wise, one fighter that I'm looking at for Teofimo Lopez that I think Josh Taylor can, you know, kind of resemble the same or at least similar in terms of being a problematic matchup might be Masayoshi Nakatani. Now, this is before Nakatani got stopped by Vasily Lomachenko, before he recently got stopped by Yoshino, the guy who Shakur Stevenson just beat. Just think about it for a second, because I know Josh Taylor, again, is a southpaw, Nakatani's not, but they were both tall fighters who like to kind of rough you up and mix it up a bit, right? Teofimo Lopez had all kinds of problems with Nakatani. Also, if you're looking at Sandor Martin, again, very different style southpaw than Josh Taylor, but Josh Taylor, when he comes in, he likes to slip a punch, and sometimes he'll dig to the body with the left hand. He did it brilliantly against Regis Prograis. He did it super well against Jose Ramirez. Josh Taylor loves to go to the body. I think he does much better work to the body than Teofimo Lopez does. Plus, he's going to have a couple inches in height over Teofimo Lopez. But again, Josh Taylor isn't the hardest guy to hit, so there is that. And again, Teofimo Lopez, very dangerous puncher. Now, if we're looking at Josh Taylor, who would be a puncher who is as dangerous punch for punch as Teofimo Lopez? Would it be Regis Prograis? I mean, they're very different styles, Lopez and Prograis, but that Josh Taylor Prograis fight, again, could have gone either way, but I almost feel like that's not like an applicable comparison here. I mean, Teofimo Lopez shoots a mean right hand, and for that reason, I almost feel like Jack Catterall isn't a great reference point here, even though Teofimo Lopez can kind of, you know, set traps when he's at his best and look for, again, the right opportunities to throw that right hand. Jack Catterall was setting Josh Taylor up brilliantly to where he couldn't miss with that left hand, especially in rounds 4 through 8. I thought Jack Catterall was kind of owning Josh Taylor at that point. But Josh Taylor also had a lot of difficulty with Jose Ramirez. I mean, who wouldn't? Jose Ramirez is about as rugged as they come. But as rugged as Jose Ramirez is, and granted, he's a better boxer than people give him credit for, and you know, Jose Ramirez makes it a point to remind people of that in his interviews. He is a pretty good boxer, but as rough as Ramirez is, Josh Taylor was just a little bit rougher. As nasty as Jose Ramirez can be in the ring, Josh Taylor was just a little nastier. I mean, not only in that style of knockdown where, you know, he looks to hit you in the clinch or just as you're starting to break up, but, you know, it was kind of on the ref who sort of tapped one and not the other, signaling to break. Josh Taylor didn't get the memo or acted like he didn't get the memo. One or the other ended up hitting Jose Ramirez and dropping him. The other knockdown, by the way, was a clean knockdown. But even aside from those scenarios, it was Josh Taylor who kind of, you know, nearly rabbit punches. He kind of hits people to, you know, in the clinches to the side of the head, or if you're starting to turn your head, it then becomes the back of your head, to where Jose Ramirez like turned his back, almost appealing to the ref, taking his whole head and body out of play. And then Josh Taylor followed him up, hit him a couple times, and Jose Ramirez kind of went into the ropes. Josh Taylor is always looking for opportunities to hit you. I mean, he did rally to make that fight against Catterall really, really close. So he could get very rugged. He could get very physical. He could get very nasty. I would say he gets a lot nastier, more physical, etc. than Teofimo Lopez. So I think Teofimo Lopez in that regard might really have his hands full. Look, when it comes down to it, I think that the two most likely scenarios here are Josh Taylor winning the fight via decision, or Teofimo Lopez winning the fight via knockout or stoppage. Now, as I mentioned, Josh Taylor had difficulties with Jose Ramirez. I mean, look at how Ramirez worked Josh Taylor's body. Josh Taylor also did a number to Jose Ramirez's body. They beat each other up to the body and up top. But Jose Ramirez is a combination puncher. He like mixes up 3 to 4 punches at a time, sometimes even a little bit more. And sometimes he'll throw like a straight right hand to then set up an even meaner left hook. Teofimo Lopez, on the other hand, will usually throw like 1 or 2, sometimes 3, but usually 1 or 2 punches at a time. So I almost feel like Teofimo Lopez kind of has a puncher's chance against Josh Taylor. I think it's a pretty good puncher's chance, given the things that I had mentioned about Josh Taylor being so front foot heavy. And when Josh Taylor shoots his left hand, like when he either digs it to the body or throws it up top, he tends to lean forward for like for a moment, kind of giving the opponent an opportunity to counter cleanly up top. So I think that Josh Taylor, especially if his legs are aging, is going to be giving Teofimo Lopez opportunities to just blast him the more aggressive Josh Taylor gets. And Josh Taylor has no other way of fighting. I mean, you could go back early in his career. The guy has always been looking for opportunities to collapse the pocket and to let his hands go. We saw it against Prograis. We saw it against Ramirez. We even saw it against Catterall in a very, again, difficult fight. So in the moments where Teofimo Lopez isn't catching Josh Taylor over pursuing, I think that Josh Taylor is going to be roughing Lopez up. I think he's going to be hitting him to the body. I think that we might see Josh Taylor put a real beating on Teofimo Lopez, especially if Lopez isn't at his best mentally right now, and if Teofimo Lopez isn't as dangerous a puncher at 140 as he was at 135. So if Lopez is like hitting Josh Taylor, but Josh Taylor isn't like wobbling or reacting immensely to it, it could be a long night for Teofimo Lopez, because I mean, he can increase the punch volume. He did it in that fight against George Kambosos. He did it going into the middle rounds against Pedro Campa, starting to pick up the activity and the punching power. And Teofimo Lopez is a very accurate puncher. But I have just seen Josh Taylor in too many scenarios where the fight starts getting ugly and Josh Taylor starts getting even uglier. So again, I think that Teofimo Lopez has it within him to knock out or stop Josh Taylor. And you know, when he's at his best, he has it in him, I think, to pull off a decision. But style-wise, I just think that the most likely scenario right now is for Josh Taylor to win a close decision win. But again, even that is operating under the assumption that we are still dealing with the same Josh Taylor. And we just don't know that. Again, because of the weight, because of the age, because of the inactivity, the very recent inactivity, because of the performance against Jack Catterall and because of what I perceive to be his slower, slightly slower and less agile legs. Like, you watch, how he used to dip so much. And, dipping is a young man's sport. When you start bending at the waist and bending at the head, moving your head, just do it. Like, go run 2 to 4 miles. Like, if you could run 2 to 4 miles right now, and then after you run 2 to 4 miles to where you start getting tired, start trying to dip at the waist and start trying to move your head around and try to do it as you're running a few miles as well. It's a difficult thing to do, especially the more tired you get. And you tend to get more tired in that way the older you get. So I just don't think that he could keep his head off the line in a way that he was able to do more so a couple of years ago. So those are very, again, problematic when you're fighting Teofimo Lopez. So the legs, again, I don't know if we're dealing with the same Josh Taylor, and then the injuries, which I don't know if the injuries, again, are related to the legs slowing down. So if this is like a 70 to 80% version of Josh Taylor, it's not going to be enough, I don't think, against Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez has faster hands than Jose Ramirez, who is hitting Josh Taylor cleanly. Teofimo Lopez's hands are at least as fast as Jack Catterall's, who was catching Josh Taylor cleanly. So I don't know if Josh Taylor still has like the reflexes to even avoid Teofimo Lopez when Teofimo Lopez jumps in for the attack with the right hand. There's just so many X factors, but you know what? I'm just going to throw a prediction out there anyway. I'm going to go Josh Taylor via close decision. I'm operating under the assumption that we are still getting something very closely resembling prime Josh Taylor, and that might still be enough to edge a decision against Teofimo Lopez. I'm expecting the fight to get nasty. I'm expecting the fight to get muddy. I'm expecting them to hit each other upside the head in the clinch. This is going to be a grueling fight. It's going to be interesting to see how the referee refs it. And this is going to be in the small theater in Madison Square Garden, which is a little bit problematic, right? Like, the fact that a fight of this magnitude is going to be, to a few thousand people and not something a little bit more grand. For whatever reason, Josh Taylor just hasn't had like a groundswell of popularity. And Teofimo Lopez's star has also dimmed. Young star. And again, with a win over Josh Taylor, he could kind of reignite that flame. But I'm going to go with Josh Taylor here via close decision. Please let me know your thoughts on Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez. Again, as big as Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia was, and as quality as Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko was, I am looking forward to this fight as much as I was looking forward to both of those fights. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who do you see winning this one, and how, and where do you see them going from here? Like, what is left for Josh Taylor to do? I tend to think he would not have great success at 147 if he was to fight like, any of the top 6 to 8 guys there. I just see that as being tough sledding because he is a little, I'm not going to say easy to hit, but not the most difficult to hit. And again, I suspect that his legs are slowing down agility wise. I just don't see that working in his favor at 147. And what happens with Teofimo Lopez, win or lose? Give me both scenarios. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. And by the way, I just hope that some of the more compelling matchups at 140 are able to be made going forward. I know Regis Prograis did not sign with Top Rank. I just hope he gets some good opponents. And I would love to see either one of these guys, Josh Taylor or Teofimo Lopez, eventually fight like a Ryan Garcia, and I mean, add Subriel Matias to the mix. I know that we are now talking PBC, so now we're talking 3 or 4 different promoters. It seems nearly impossible for some of these matchups to be made. I'm just staying hopeful because this is such a talent-rich division, and the most compelling fight right now to me in the division is Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez as it stands. Let me know your thoughts. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.